Hey everybody, today is August 1st, and this is the Operator Framework OLM Dev meeting. We do follow the CNCF Code of Conduct, so essentially please be respectful and kind. And we are recording this meeting. It will be posted on YouTube after it is finished processing. And let's go through today's agenda. So first topic is from Joe, who is on vacation, but he did ask for us to announce that our new process around documenting proposals, which we're calling briefs, is live. And we are looking for anybody with any interest or opinion, comment, or questions to please take a look at them and let us know what you think. So there's a link here to the announcement in the Slack channel. And then we also have this link for the folder that contains the initial set of briefs that we have, which include funnel deployment health, changing catalog D to use a different mechanism for serving its APIs, constraints and pre-flight checks, initial upgrade support in operator controller, and version range support in operator controller and the operator APIs. So these are open for anybody to comment. I think you may need to join the Google group if you don't have comment access. So please do that if you need it. And also, if anybody does have any comments during today's meeting, please feel free to use Zoom's raise hand feature. I will be keeping track of that off to the side here. So before I move on to the next topic, does anybody want to say anything about the briefs and proposals? Anik, go ahead.
Yeah, so essentially these when you look at these, they're essentially the next set of things that the community is thinking about and working on, right? So it looks like it is essentially replacing the release planning link that we have down below. Is that a correct statement? And if that is the case, should we replace that section where it says next milestone idea generation check-in, and there's a link to the release planning? Should we just replace that with these two links for the brief folder and the RFC folder?
I don't know that it's necessarily a direct replacement, just because there could be a whole bunch of briefs that are being written at any given time, and they may or may not correspond to what's coming up soon. So I do think, though, that I'd like to see, I think discussions are a good venue for chatting about release plans because it's a little bit more permanent and locatable compared to a Slack conversation. I also think using a GitHub project to try and track this in a more visual manner would be helpful. But maybe that's something that, if folks have opinions on a better way to keep track of what's coming up in the next milestone and the one after that, if you've got any ideas, feel free to chat in Slack or GitHub or wherever seems appropriate. Does that help, Anik?
Maybe a little bit. Essentially, the thing is, the briefs, the way I'm looking at it, the briefs and the RFC folder announcement that we just did, that is in one meeting's agenda. And then once we start having more meetings, it gets buried down below. But then this release planning link is the thing that gets carried over in every agenda item. So if that release planning is empty, it gives that impression that for someone who's just dropping in 2 or 3 weeks down the line, it just gives the impression that we are not doing anything in the release planning. So either we make this, if we can find a way to make the brief and the RFC links more easily findable for someone who's just dropping in, or if we start populating the release planning, I think that might help a little bit. But yeah, I think.
Okay. Yeah, I think visibility is good. Uh, okay, I will definitely think about that. And if you've got ideas for what to do, feel free to suggest them. But thanks for bringing that up. Okay, Bryce, I'm gonna turn it over to you on community outreach thoughts and process.
Yeah, so I've been thinking a little bit about how we might be able to grow the community around the OLM subproject, specifically regarding OLM v1, and potentially trying to get some more early adopters, kind of stuff from the community. Having participated in writing some of the briefs, one of the things that I've noticed is that when it comes to stakeholders in those briefs, it's kind of difficult to identify who might be using some of the features and functionality in OLM v1 in the community. And so I think it would be really nice to spend some time trying to expand our community, and was just kind of curious on like folks' thoughts on how we can do that, if there's a certain process we should follow. So for reference, some of the stuff that I'm thinking is as part of the CNCF and having our CNCF status, we have a lot of opportunities to provide mentorship opportunities. So there's the Google Summer Code stuff that we can participate in. There's the LFX, so the Linux Foundation mentoring programs. There's also, a lot of open source, like community building events as we're coming up into October. I know there's Hacktoberfest. So like we could get our repositories configured to, participate in Hacktoberfest and all those kinds of things. And so those are just some like things off the top of my head that I think we could do to improve our visibility in the community, or like our visibility in general. There's also the operator SDK. What we've done in the past is whenever we cut a release, we post into that Kubernetes operators channel. And I haven't seen anything around OLM v1 there. And that has something like somewhere near 6,000 members. So that might be a really good avenue to start getting visibility into OLM v1, and potentially grabbing, people who are developing operators, new operators and stuff like that might be interested getting in on the ground floor with OLM v1 and potentially, contributing or helping drive the direction of some of these projects. And so with all that already being said, for process, I'm wondering if it would be beneficial to maybe have like, maybe not elected, but some form of like community ambassadors that they, spend some time focused on facilitating some of those things, making sure our repository is well visible, that there's good first issues, we're participating in things like Hacktoberfest, we're participating in mentorship programs, stuff like that. But so that's kind of all that I had off the top of my head, and I kind of want to just open up the rest for discussion on this and get other folks' thoughts.
Anybody have any comments? Not seeing anybody come off mute. I do think it's a good topic to bring up, Bryce, so thank you. A lot of times what I've found can be helpful depending on your like level of outreach and visibility is if you go onto social networks, namely Twitter, I won't use its new name. If you post things there, sometimes you can drum up some interest. Also, I think there's a variety of podcasts that are in the Kubernetes space. So if you can find ways to get onto one of those or multiple, that might get some visibility. I also think just posting on our GitHub discussions could be a good way to at least continue this conversation, since not everybody is necessarily here right now who normally would be. So I'd say like keep bringing this up, be it in Slack, GitHub discussions, future sync, future meetings that we have. And I know we're all busy, so I don't know that we, I don't know who's going to volunteer necessarily. Hopefully we'll find some folks who can find some time, but let's keep talking about it and see what sort of progress we can make. Anything else on that, Bryce?
I was gonna say that sounds good. I can create a GitHub discussion, and or maybe a Slack thread makes more sense. I'll figure out one or the other, and create something just to facilitate, building that conversation and coming up with a process and things like that.
Great. Okay. And I see, just looking at chat, Michael says he could help with blog posts, and we could put it in the news site, cross post to Medium and dev.to. Sounds good. Thanks. Okay, so I wanted to give a brief update on some of the things I've been doing with Tilt. If you were here at the last meeting, or if you weren't, I did a little demo on what you can do with Tilt to help with rapid iterative development for OLM v1. And I've actually put it all together. Previously, what I had was a separate Tilt configuration for catalog D, ruckpack, and operator controller. But what I've done now is I've created just a new, it's not a repo yet because it's just on my laptop, but it's a sibling to the other repository. It's just called Tilt. And so if I run Tilt up, what this will do is load my Tilt file. And the first thing it does is it handles getting Cert Manager installed for you, which is something that I didn't have in my demo from last week. And then you can see it's picking up ruckpack's customized configuration, catalog Ds, and operator controllers as well. And it goes through, and if you saw this list of items last week, you would only see ruckpack by itself or catalog D or operator controller. They're now all in one spot. And another cool thing is you'll see it says waiting for shared image build. What I was finding before was that they all tended to do the same preparatory work to get an image ready to go. And I've actually added Delve debugging support, and that's one of the things that takes a while. Install Delve the first time, and if I have to do that in 6 or 7 different image builds, that tends to stack up and take longer than it should. So instead of doing that, I create a helper image which has Delve installed in it, and then all of the other images just pull from, you can see it's this localhost helper image. And the first time around, it takes a little bit of time, but it's not too bad to get all of these binaries built and images built and then running. And shouldn't take too much longer here. So this one, yeah, you can see this is catalog D is up and running, operator controller is up and running, all of the ruckpack bits are going. And the cool thing that you'll also see up here are port forwards up at the top. This is for Delve. So if you have VS Code or Golang, or you want to use Delve on the command line, you can hook in and live debug against these running processes in the pods in your kind cluster or wherever you're running it. So my question to the community, and I'll probably post this on Slack or GitHub as well to try and get as much input as possible, is does this type of workflow seem useful where everything is together and you just do a one-shot command to get things up and running? Or is it better to have separate tilt setups, one for each repository? So that's the question. I'll post that on probably Slack. And if it is helpful and beneficial, then we can either create a new repository or find a place where we can put this single shared tilt file that spins everything up. So that's what I got for that. Any questions or comments? Nope. All right. So Anik, you have a new doc site to share.
Yes. So I think Michael was alluding to this in the chat already. Essentially, we've decided to liven up the docs and go live with the OLM v1 docs with whatever we have right now, in the hope that all future iterations of the v1 work that we're doing will be delivered along with docs. So this is what the site is, and it's essentially, for the moment, picking up every doc from the operator controller repository, whatever's in the docs folder. So whenever we are contributing docs, we don't have to worry about the site. We just have to contribute docs in the docs folder. But we do plan on bringing up similar websites for every individual components that OLM v1 is composed of. And Michael, who's here, I think, with us, and I are writing a brief about this just to make sure that we get this plan out and get a chance for the community to get in any feedback, comments that they have about organizing our docs in this way. But for now, what we have is this doc site, and that's like a trailer for what's about to come. And that's pretty much all I had to announce.
Very cool. Thanks for all the work y'all put into that. Anybody have any questions or comments for Anik? Not seen anybody raise hands or unmute. So thanks again, and looking forward to seeing that brief. And yes, Frederick, it is great to have docs in the first place. All right. Let's see. Well, I do see a question. Everything fans into this doc from multiple sources, right?
Yeah, from multiple, not yet. I don't know if I'm getting this question exactly accurately, but this is basically every doc that's in the docs folder for the operator controller repository that is showing up in the doc site. I don't know what multiple sources is exactly alluding to.
Probably multiple repos, if I'm guessing right, Victor.
I think that the mkdocs does support that, but I think initially, while we're working on the information architecture and sort of trying to figure out like customer journeys across the repos, having a little bit of manual organization for that is probably, at least right now, it seems like a good place to start, so that like as a tech writer, I can kind of contribute and sort of refine that documentation as it's sort of coming in. But ideally, once we start moving along, we can have better templates and sort of a more style guide support, so we can, and I'll try to talk about all this in the brief, but we can you know, come up with templates, come up with some tooling to help with style, so that we could eventually get to a point where we have a, you know, just an OLM v1 or an operator framework doc site that can be pulling docs from all the different repos. But I don't know if that answers your question.
Looks like it did. Thanks, Michael. Okay, I did see some other stuff in the chat. Anybody want to voice what was going on in there?
Yeah, I think we're still a little confused. Is is that in general OLM v1 documentation for everything, or is it just for the operator controller?
So for now, we're just putting everything in there. But there's a very minimal set of stuff that we've, all the work that we've done, if you look at it from the docs perspective, it's 3 or 4 docs. So the plan right now is to keep that doc site up to date with, you can just consume that docs for OLM v1. Eventually we'll start spanning out to different repositories, different projects having their own doc sites, and then one individual website pulling in from these multiple resources. That's what we were talking about the future. But again, I think a lot of these questions will become will be hopefully answered in the brief, and also we'll give everybody a chance to contribute to the ideas about how to organize this site. But yes, the short answer is, for now, that website is everything. You can just consume that to get started with OLM v1. If you just look at under the tasks sections, it gives you a workflow of here's how to use OLM v1.
Yeah, okay. I just wanted to make sure that so all of my coworkers, right, have been entrenched in v0, and then mostly ignoring v1 for the time being because they're busy with v0. And so they're now getting curious about it. I want them to give feedback. And so I wanted to give them a good starting point, because there were all sorts of documents everywhere for a long time, right? As ideas have been progressing. So it looks like I can give them this link to start from if they have never seen this before. Even if they have seen it, they should start here. And as we move forward, this should be updated to point to other documents as those mature. Is that about right?
That is exactly right. Yep. And
Perfect.
That's the whole purpose of this doc site, is to get people started and give us more feedback.
Okay, this will be the main bookmark I give to everybody. Thank you.
And please tell them to feel free to open documentation issues with questions and things like that, even if we don't have the information yet. But Anik put together a lot of this documentation so far, and I'm going to be while I'm working on some downstream doc work, to be working on refining upstream and downstream. So it would be helpful if there are things, questions that come in the form of issues.
I think that's a good disclaimer to give. I think Kevin also mentioned one of these things where he's already seeing outdated stuff. There was a lot of docs that was put in pretty quickly, so I'm hoping that we'll start getting contributions from different sources and get those docs refined. So Kevin, for example, the thing that you brought up, I think that might be a good thing to either open a PR for, or essentially I'm saying that there was a lot of doc that was written. I'm hoping that at least 90% of this is accurate, but I won't be surprised if more than 10% is not accurate. So it's time to start iterating on those. And if anybody wants to help, that'll be great.
All right. So thank you, everybody, for going over that. I'm excited to see these docs coming forward. The last topic in the agenda is Bryce with the 040 milestone and needing a due date. And
Yep,
it's empty.
Yeah, I just created it because I was looking back at the old action items and realized I'd forgot to create it at the end of the meeting last week. So the milestone's created. I wasn't sure what due date we wanted to put on it. I don't remember if we had discussed that, but so we can discuss that, and then we can, I don't know if we want to do it as part of this meeting, but for whenever we triage issues or anything like that, we can try to get them marked as into this milestone for the next release.
Yeah, I would propose that, well, first, thanks for creating that. I would propose that we take this asynchronous and discuss timelines and what potentially is in and out, in Slack or GitHub. Like we can use the release planning discussion, but there's definitely folks that aren't here, and I think to be the most inclusive, it would be best if we tried to do this asynchronously. And I see you got a thumbs up. Thanks. Alrighty, so let's see. I did open the release planning thing before. We saw that it was empty. So please be thinking about what you might want to see in the upcoming release. As Onik asked earlier, are the briefs representative of what we're probably going to be doing next? For right now, the answer is pretty much yes. So just to refresh folks, that's bundle deployment health, catalog D serving, constraints, pre-flight checks, upgrade support, and version range support. So if something's not here and you're interested in seeing it soon, or something is here and you really want it, please let us know. And does anybody have any last topics before we call it a meeting? Do we want to transition completed RFCs to corresponding issues? Yeah, I think that's a fantastic question. It's something I've been trying to figure out as well, which is how do we avoid duplicating tracking things all over the place, but also how do we know that we are making progress and that we can use the tooling that we have, which is basically GitHub issues and projects to keep track of things. So I think we probably, at the very least, want to get RFCs or briefs or some combination of the two in there. That's probably also a discussion that if folks have ideas now, let's talk about them, but we can also do it async. Go ahead, Bryce.
Yeah, I was just going to say, for catalog D, we did the brief process a little bit backwards, where we had the RFC for the content storage change first, and then we created the brief after. But if you go to the catalog D repo, I created a milestone specifically for tracking all the work tied to the RFC for that. And it's not based on a version or anything, so that we could specifically track the progress on the RFC's implementation in case it spans multiple releases.
Sorry, I was dealing with my keyboard. You said you created was it a project or a milestone? Milestone.
Yeah, it should be the only one there for right now,
yeah,
because we don't have any like release milestones or anything. But my thinking for this was in case it spans multiple releases, if we decide to do the time-based releases in catalog D as well, which I think we just inherently have through the operator controller doing a time-based release. So this just allows us to track the progress for what we feel needs to be implemented for the entirety of that RFC.
Okay, makes sense. Thank you. So yeah, I think short answer, we definitely need to track this stuff using GitHub tooling. So I think this is a great start. All right, well, I'm going to give you all about half your meeting time back. So thanks for attending today. And I guess, sorry, the last thing is seeing if anybody would like to volunteer for the next meeting to host it. And if not, we can find someone async.
I'll do it.
Alex, that was you?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. All right, well, have a good rest of your week, everybody.
Thank you.